What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. I am finally in Spain and it is so good to be here. So let's begin this video because this is crazy.
So maybe the abductions have been ongoing.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden the government is interested in developing these intuitive communicators, which you'll later become. And that involves altering the genetics of fetuses inside the womb of specific mothers, one of whom happened to be your mother.
Yes.
All right, Vetters, please hit that like button. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, y'all. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers before the end of the year. All right, so basically, Jesse Michels released this interview with this guy named Dan Sherman. Now, there's a lot to this story. He allegedly was a part of something called Project Destiny, all right, with the NSA. And the gist of it is that his mother was abducted by aliens and while she was pregnant with Dan, okay? And the aliens sort of did something to the mom and, well, Dan, right? And he sort of grew up with this sort of, intuitive communication, power to speak with aliens, allegedly.
And he said, I'm going to play a tone and I want you to mentally hum that tone. And he said that you will eventually feel a connection. The line will change. When I saw the sine wave move, I went, oh, okay, well, there's a mental disconnect there that's not supposed to be happening. That this is not possible.
Our guest today is an Air Force sergeant who worked at the highest levels on classified projects in electronics and signals intelligence for the United States government. We have thorough documentation of his military records. His service is not something you can really argue with, nor is his mental health. This is the most nonchalant conversation I've ever had about alien telepathic communication. In this exclusive long-form interview, retired Technical Sergeant Dan Sherman claims that while serving in the Air Force in the early 90s, he was recruited for an extremely classified program at the NSA, or National Security Agency. This program was called Project Preserve Destiny. Project Preserve Destiny's purpose? To telepathically decode alien signals for the NSA. You heard me right. Alien signals that seem to telepathically transmit descriptions of alien abductions across the United States. Alien signals that ultimately gave our very curious guest answers about the very nature of the alien presence on Earth, how these beings travel, how they conceive of time, what they think about humans, and much, much more. Dan Sherman was originally told by the Air Force captain who read him into the program that he was given this telepathic ability by the aliens themselves when they abducted Sherman's pregnant mother in the early 1960s and altered his genetics while he was a fetus in her womb. This genetic blueprint would allow him to grow into what the NSA would dub an intuitive communicator.
With the IC communication, you can feel it in your brain. You can feel, you can't localize it. It's not a localization, but I can feel like it's in that area of my brain right there.
Whoa.
And
Sherman believes the NSA may even have tracked him since childhood into his young adulthood and military service until he was finally read into the program. Do you think that the NSA or powers that be know that this interview is happening? Because of the extremely sensitive nature of this NSA program and its ties to black programs, Dan tries to abstain mentioning which bases this Project Preserve Destiny was conducted at. But my researchers and I were able to locate one of these bases, and I bring it up at the end of this interview, catching Sherman a bit off guard. Not only that, but at the end of this video, we explore an independent researcher's use of the Freedom of Information Act to learn more about Project Preserve Destiny. He sent a request to the government to see all of the files on it. As you'll see, both the Air Force and NSA's responses to his request are fairly telling. The point is, the skeptics can have at it, but this case isn't going away. It's very hard to dismiss. I'd argue that Dan Sherman's story is one of the most important UFO legacy program-related accounts we have to contend with. So sit back, relax, and prepare to have your worldview crumble with this week's very courageous American alchemist, retired sergeant, intuitive alien communicator, and UFO whistleblower, Dan Sherman.
But again, there was so much to this story. It's a 3-hour interview. I highly recommend watching. It was really well done, as always, with Jesse here, right? So I'm going to put a link in the description. Go check out the full interview. And, the attention that this story is getting is, I would say, a little unusual in the sense that a lot of people are paying attention to this and kind of saying like, yeah, there's something here with this guy, right? So again, make up your own mind, but let's dive into the details. Now, make sure to stay tuned to the very end because the most fascinating clip from that whole interview, at least for me, I'm going to share with you. But first, let's hear from Dan and Jesse a little bit more about this whole situation.
So at some point, right, humanity or the U.S. came into contact with these, and I believe he does say gray alien beings.
Well, I think that came, the gray
later.
Terminology came later.
Okay,
he didn't mention
with
that.
alien beings. And in 1960, this project begins where the aliens are given access, presumably by the American federal government, to genetically...
I would say that the government was given access.
Okay.
Not because the aliens, they had access, whether we liked it or not.
Okay.
I would imagine.
Okay.
I mean, if you think about it, because so they did it in concert with the military or the government, but I don't know who gave access to who.
Sure.
I mean,
so maybe the abductions have been ongoing.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden the government is interested in developing these intuitive communicators, which you'll later become. And that involves altering the genetics of fetuses inside the womb of specific mothers, one of whom happened to be your mother.
Yes. And they also chose it by demographics too, because they knew that a certain percentage of offspring would want to go into the military, of course, so they could track that progression and to keep it tightly controlled, because you can't, I mean, if somebody went off to be, in some job they couldn't control, then it would be useless. So they tried to demographically, and I would imagine many of the underprivileged and, poor people were the ones that were poor families were the ones that were selected. And mine was one of those, definitely.
How are you feeling as he's telling you this?
Well, I believe I was fairly numb at first. Like, you're getting information that is so unbelievable that you think, okay, this has got to be a joke, or this is one of those hazing things, when you go somewhere and sometimes they haze you because you're the new person or whatever. I mean, that did cross my mind, but in general terms, I was very numb to the situation until at the end, it started to gel. Like, this is not a joke, because he would have probably revealed it by now. And so, and I'm in the NSA complex. This is not some office in some base somewhere where they can do that type of thing, and joke with you. So it became real very, very, very quickly.
What do you say back to him?
Not a lot. I think I tried to ask some questions, but he was very, very businesslike as far as the revealing of information, because I don't think he knew a lot, to answer those questions. I think he knew exactly what he needed to do to get his job done, just as I only was fed the information that I need to get my job done. So that's very common in the classified world. Is need to know. If you have a need to know that, then you'll know it. But if you don't have a need to know, then you have no need to know that.
And he describes the sort of compartmentalization of these programs a little bit more, right? In this conversation.
He went over the onion effect. He said that you have these different layers that are built in the military and in government in general, but definitely in the military, where you have one layer hiding another layer. And of course, when you're at the official use only and unclassified aspects of things, there's not much of a layer. But when you get to the secret and the top secret and then black, and then in our case, and in the case of this, the gray project. So one is designed to cover the other. And especially when you get up to the black and gray project, because when you have a gray project, obviously you need funding, you need all the logistics that go into running that. And you have to have a reason, you have to have a line item, you have to have justification for manpower and funding and all that. So you do that because you have a black project that's co-located with it. And only a select few of the people in the black project know about the gray project so that they can do their job and administer the gray project. But all the funding, all the manpower, like, me going from one base to another, it's all under the auspices of the black project.
All right, so this is absolutely fascinating, if you ask me, right? The NSA has this Project Destiny. Again, we went to like some underground school, Dan Sherman, right? He said it was underground, underneath this like house or something, whatever, building underneath, blue van, taken to these secret places, hooked up to headphones and computers, and, just started communicating with aliens because, again, allegedly his mom had been abducted and created this, I don't know if you'd call it a hybrid human. I don't know. But the gentleman does seem very sincere. Doesn't mean that he actually communicated with aliens, but I believe a lot of his story, that makes sense, right? Not necessarily what happened, but, how it happened, right? If that makes sense. So, and again, this is fascinating, right? And Jesse points out in this interview that there were many things that he found that led credence to this story, right? They kind of briefly mention it a little bit in the interview. I mean, they do mention in the interview, this FOIA document that kind of went to the NSA, and kind of that leads some credence to it. There's many other things. So again, I do highly recommend watching the full interview so you can make up your own mind, because this story is bonkers, right? If you ask me, it's just absolutely bonkers. So look, like I said earlier in the video, this got a lot of attention, right, in a lot of different places. But one in particular that was kind of interesting that people were sharing online in the UFO community was this clip from Megyn Kelly, right? Normally a political commentator, who had this to say about this interview with Dan Sherman.
And Walter drops this tweet, and we're like, wow, that's interesting. What is that about? Could it be this documentary? And he said no. And then this other thing just dropped. And this other thing is a bit from a show called American Alchemy. And there's an interview on this show that we expect to drop later tonight. And Walter has confirmed to us that this is in part, not in whole, but in part, what he was referring to. Victor, take a look at this.
Anyway, we just sat there and he unveiled this mind-blowing thing to me, proceeded to tell me that I was part of a project that started in 1960, I believe it was, and the genesis of it was in 1947. We came in contact with an alien species. In 1960, they started a project. It was called Project Preserve Destiny. It was designed to genetically manage fetuses, human fetuses, so that they would have the heightened ability to do this particular thing that I was going to school for. My mother was one of the selected targets, or whatever you want to call it. The result of it was that it gave me the ability to have this communications.
That was in order for you to become an intuitive communicator who is basically able to receive messages from...
Well, receive and transmit.
Receive and transmit.
Yeah, communicate basically, back and forth.
And he's telling you all of this?
Yeah, he said that that's what my job would be doing, That's what my job would be, to do that, yes.
Okay. So that there was something called Project Preserve Destiny, started in 1960, in which they did something to pregnant mothers that he claims heightened the infant's ability to communicate with aliens, and that he's been told he was one such person. Now, I'd be laughing at this openly as absurd if it didn't have some sort of blessing from Walter Kern in the form of that tweet, because he's not crazy. He's not a nutcase. But I definitely feel this is total bullshit. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Your thoughts?
I'm kind of with you. I wish that when they interviewed him, then they showed us an MRI, a PET scan, and a CT scan, and full blood work, and then gave us some type of recording or audio version how he could use this unique ability to communicate something, just some hard data. So I'm not saying that people didn't believe that and they didn't pursue that, but it seems like every time somebody sees something or comes forward with an encounter with an alien, they don't present enough evidence to convince the skeptical. The skeptical who are not prejudiced. Yeah, and I'm not biased either way. I'm willing and eager to be persuaded. The thing that what I think they don't fully appreciate sometimes is that if what they're saying is true, it remakes everything, because you go back through all of history then and you say these people were communicating with humans and imparting knowledge, and this accounts for that, and this technological this, and wars, and all of these. It affects religion, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam. It affects everything. It would be a totality of a remaking of assumed knowledge, of empiricism, of technology, of religion, of politics, everything. If you were going to tell the American people, well, your government 65 years ago knew about aliens and they had a special division and they genetically altered people to communicate with these people and they didn't tell you, that would be something. But then the other thing finally is, well, if he had that ability, will he please tell me what they said to him?
So again, this is like going a lot of different places. There was this journalist, Walter Kern, who has this newspaper, okay, called County Highway, and he'd actually released an interview with David Grush in this like old school newspaper a couple years ago. I covered it. It was amazing, actually. It was just really cool. Old school newspaper that you can get online delivered to your house, like real paper, like like I grew up.
There's a promise that we'll get to know more. I mean, there always is with UFOs. We are always a year away from the big reveal. But he assured me that that reveal is kind of got a schedule now, and in the next year will be accelerated in a way that the whole world will find astonishing. So what do I think of it all? Well, because I can't see any evidence of it, except in his narration of the thing and his assurances that various things exist. I can't, I can't handicap the likelihood that we're all going to be convinced of this, but I will tell you that the information operation, whether or not it's backed by real craft and so on, is serious, very serious, and it's going to grow more intense.
Walter's, a great reporter. He's been involved with the UFO community here and there, really ever since that David Grush article. He even came out and said that David Grush had told him that Dick Cheney was at the top of the, UFO cover-up. I covered that.
I talked to a high-level UFO whistleblower last year, and I said to him, who among all the people in society is keeping this secret? Who sits atop the pyramid of classified information about UFOs? And I thought he was going to say something strange, like the Grand Mason of the, Scottish Rite Lodge, or Prince Charles, or the Mossad. But he said, Dick Cheney.
Oh my goodness. Why does that not surprise me though? Because of course he would be, right?
Interestingly enough, Walter Kern also tweeted this story out about Dan Sherman and wanted people to take a closer look at it. So I don't know. Again, make up your own mind. But like I said, I wanted to save what I thought was the best clip from the interview for the very end here. All right. So take a look at this.
Did you at any point think that maybe this wasn't an alien on the other end of the communication? You were just being told that? Because I do think this is what makes this whole topic so tricky, is that in certain cases, the reverse dynamic of what we've been talking about this entire time, sometimes you're not tagging a gray project with a black project, but you're tagging a black project with a fake gray thing to catch spies. It's this classic intelligence move. Say you had some like anti-gravity vehicle or whatever, you'd call it alien, and then you'd write a bunch of fake documents that, talk about aliens or whatever.
Interesting.
And then it would it'd be like putting like a dye into a pipe, and you'd see the communication trail, and you'd catch Soviet spies, or, you'd do also throw people off the trail or whatever. Maybe you'd initiate recruits because it would be sort of a puzzle for them to figure out. So it would serve all these purposes to actually call black stuff alien. So did you ever think maybe I'm actually just communicating with, in a way that breaks physics, which is fascinating, or the physics as we know it, but humans through more mind matter parapsychological means? Now we have like the telepathy tapes. It's one of the most popular podcasts in the US earlier this year. Yeah, you're probably familiar.
I heard the name, yeah.
Talks about these like nonverbal, often autistic children who, can telepathically communicate and commune on this sort of hill. It's absolutely fascinating. They sort of send each other images at really high accuracy rates. And so did you ever think maybe you were part of a human parapsychology program and they were tagging it with the alien thing?
I gave that some thought, especially when I was writing the book. I wanted to kind of flesh out my thoughts on how it was how it would be interpreted into the public, and what people would ascribe to my experience, and how they would try to block or try to get it off at what I thought and go into other areas. And so I did think of that. And I guess it's possible, it's not impossible, obviously, because I never saw an alien. I never, even visually, I never saw an alien, and never got any indicator as to what they were, human or not. But I can say that the way the communications happened, unless we've somehow gained the ability to do that in some way, the style of communication was very foreign to how our minds think.
Yeah.
So maybe on this plane, even if you have two humans, that is kind of the standard by which you would communicate in that way, even between two humans. But I got this distinct impression that it was not a human.
So again, I appreciate Dan's, genuineness there. It seemed very authentic, that answer, that, yeah, he still leaves open the fact that this could not be real, right? Could be a psyop. And he never saw an alien. He doesn't know, right? So I don't know, I find that very authentic, right? I wish more people would come out with their stories like that, would at least admit that. Tell their story, absolutely. Go all the way through what you think happened, but definitely leave open that little door that, maybe it's not that. So that's cool. Honestly, that added a lot of credence to me just taking in a story about it. Doesn't necessarily mean that I believe that that's what happened, because even he's not 100% sure that happened. He's the guy that it happened to, but he did explain that it would be unusual if it wasn't true just based on the form of communication he used. So I don't know. Again, I just found it to be an authentic answer. But let me know what you think down in the comments. So anyway, y'all, I want to thank y'all so much for allowing me a few days off while I got to Spain finally. I'm here. I'm all here, moved, done. Boom. Spain is home now. So I want to thank y'all for the support for those few days off, and we'll be back at it. I am going to be building out a brand new vetted studio, but that's going to take months. It probably won't be ready till the very beginning of 2026. All right, betters, we'll see you on the next one. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
Hi, Patrick. I wanted to tell you about my interaction with psionics. First time I experienced anything like that was 6 or 7 years ago. We were celebrating the 4th of July, I believe it was, down at the beach, and everybody in the beach house was asleep. I was sitting by the pool. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had just recently heard about the CE5 protocols and watched this, something about it, and I figured I'd give it a shot. And as I'm meditating and trying to vector these things in, nothing actually happens. It wasn't until about 15 minutes later, I'm standing on my porch and I'm looking up into a black patch of the sky where there really wasn't many stars at all, and just like a light switch, boop, an orb disappeared, and it was huge, and it was moving extremely slow, and I teared up a little bit, and I actually have never done it again since then because it scared me so bad. And actually since then, I began seeing orbs all over the place. So, be careful. Thanks, bye.